For 1,000 years the galaxy knew peace and calm as the stars slept and empires rested. No one fought, and no one screamed. The weapons were locked, and the skies were quiet, like a dream, where nothing breaks the silence. Earth was part of the Galactic Union, a great circle of powerful alien races, all working together. For peace they shared knowledge, trade, and stories. They believed war was something of the past, something old and forgotten, something that only existed in the ancient days. Humans were quiet in the Union. They spoke little, they listened more, they worked hard, they smiled, they kept to themselves. They helped when asked, they never pushed, they never shouted, they never showed force. They were like shadows in a bright room, always present, but never in the center. The Xarn were different. They were tall, strong, with skin like glass, and minds like fire. They believed in control and order. They watched the humans for centuries, and waited. They did not trust silence. They did not trust peace. They thought peace made the strong weak, and the weak bold. Then came the day of the peace celebration, a day shared by all planets in the Union. Each year, the stars would glow brighter, ships would light the sky, and everyone would sing and remember the first day peace was signed 1,000 years ago. But this year something changed. At the moment the celebration began, Earth's sky turned gray. The clouds above every city stopped moving. The stars vanished. The air turned heavy, and strange the people looked up. But no one screamed, no one ran, they just waited. Then every satellite in orbit went dark without warning. Every signal, every beam, every sensor was cut like a thread sliced by an invisible blade across the black sky. A voice spoke through the static, loud and sharp, a voice that echoed through every speaker on every planet in the Union. It was the voice of the Xarn High General. "We declare the end of peace." The voice said, "The humans are no longer welcome. We now take what we should have taken long ago. The galaxy is ours, and Earth will be the first to fall." The Union gasped, planets cried, stars blinked in fear, but Earth did not move. Earth did not panic. Earth did not shout. No alarms, no sirens, no war drums. Instead, the humans smiled. In command centers underground, in towers high above clouds, in silent rooms filled with glowing screens, the leaders of Earth watched the message again and again, their faces calm, their eyes quiet. "Is that all?" the general asked, looking at the screen. One man nodded. "That's all, sir." "Then let them come," the general said, and he smiled too. Across the planet, life did not change. People drank their morning tea, children played with small robots, old men read books on benches as the Xarn fleet moved across space, thousands of ships sharp and wide like flying blades, glowing red with anger. The Xarn expected fear, they expected screaming, they expected Earth to beg. They expected the humans to kneel and offer peace again, but they saw no fear, no panic, no chaos. Only silence and smiles. The first ships reached Earth orbit fast and loud, ready to strike, ready to burn, ready to show power. But there were no targets, only empty skies, only fake signals, only decoy beacons drifting like dust. The Xarn fired anyway, burning holes in clouds, hitting empty bases, striking fake cities built for training. No one screamed, no one died, only the machines burned, and the wind carried the fire into the sea. Then the voice of the Xarn High General came again, this time unsure, this time with a pause. "Where is your army?" he asked. "Where is your fleet? Where is your fear?" But Earth did not answer. In the heart of the planet, under the oldest mountain, a cold light blinked, and a woman pressed a single button. Not a red button, not a button of war, just a small silver switch with no name. Far above the Earth, hidden behind the shadow of the moon, 10 ships woke up, ships with black armor, and no light, ships that did not reflect light, ships that the galaxy had never seen before. They moved without sound, they moved without trace, they moved like ghosts in the night. The Xarn ships continued to fire, wasting power, wasting fuel, screaming into the void, trying to scare ghosts. And the humans kept smiling. "Why are they laughing?" the Xarn High General asked again and again. But no one answered, not even his own soldiers could speak. They were watching the humans too. "Something is wrong," one Xarn commander said. "They are not fighting, but we are losing. Something is not right." Back on Earth, a child looked up and asked her father, "Why are they angry at us? We did nothing wrong." The father nodded and replied, "That is why they are angry, because we did nothing." The night grew deeper, the sky darker, the Earth silent, the Xarn louder, but their noise meant nothing, their rage meant less. Because the storm had already started, and Earth was ready. The stars watched as the Xarn moved in like a tide of fire, and thunder ready to crush, ready to destroy, ready to prove they were stronger than peace, stronger than patience, stronger than time itself. Their ships filled the black sky with red light, weapons, charged engines, burning paths through space, clouds of war moving toward Earth like a storm of blades. Inside the largest Xarn vessel, the High General stood tall, his skin shining like crystal, his eyes sharp like knives, his voice cold with pride. Today, we show them what fear looks like. Today, we end their illusion of strength. Today, we remind them who rules the stars. He raised his hand, and the First Order was given attack without mercy. The Xarn fleet unleashed its fury. Thousands of beams poured from their ships like rivers of fire, striking at Earth's upper orbit, cutting through abandoned satellites, hitting empty defense platforms made of plastic and foam and steel that held no soul. They struck hard, they struck fast, they struck with all their pride, and still Earth stayed silent. There was no return fire, no defense grid, no voice from below, no shield, no sound, only stillness. The Xarn commanders looked at each other, confused. Why is there no response? Are they already broken? Are they too afraid to fight back? The High General smiled. They have no power, only old words, only empty pride. We break them today. We break them forever. More strikes followed, targeting old Earth stations from the early days of space travel, ruins left in orbit decades ago, training grounds floating lifeless in the void, all hit, all destroyed, all meaningless. Back on Earth, the people continued with their lives. Shops opened, children went to school, families cooked and laughed and told stories, not of war, but of love and sky and dreams. The skies above Earth shimmered, but no alarms rang, no jets flew, no rockets launched. The Xarn grew restless. Where is their fleet? Where are their warriors? Where are the heroes they speak of in their books? Still no answer came. In a quiet room deep below the surface, in a place older than memory, humans watched screens that showed everything, every beam, every movement, every Xarn mistake. A woman leaned forward and said, "They're wasting fire." Another nodded. "Let them think. We are weak. The more they believe it, the easier it will be." At that same moment, far beyond the moon, a signal was sent, one that did not make a sound, one that carried no heat, no light, only a simple pulse invisible to normal eyes. And from the dark came motion. Small ships black as shadow woke and moved in silence. They did not glow. They did not shake the space around them. They were not seen by the Xarn. They did not want to be seen. One passed under a Xarn warship unnoticed and left a gift, a device no bigger than a stone that latched on and vanished. Another moved into the center of the fleet, like a fish swimming through still water, and no one knew it was there. The humans were not fighting, yet they were watching, learning, measuring. The Xarn thought the battle was theirs. They believed they had already won. The High General ordered more fire, more targets, more destruction, but all they hit was dust and stone and steel that never mattered. They were loud and proud, but they were blind. A young Xarn pilot asked his captain, "Sir, why are there no bodies? Why is there no blood? Why is Earth still whole?" The captain said, "It does not matter. They are afraid. They hide. We win." But deep inside the pilot, something felt wrong. In another Xarn ship, a different crew found something strange. Their systems began to act slow. Cameras blinked, engines paused, maps turned blank, as if someone was inside watching. "Sir, we may have been breached," one said. The captain laughed. "Impossible. No one can touch our tech." But the lights flickered again, and silence grew. Back on Earth, an old general looked at the sky and whispered, "Let them come closer, just a little more." He touched a screen and watched as 10 more black ships moved into place, silent as breath, sharp as thought. The people of Earth still did not run. They still did not shout. They still walked under the sun, as if nothing had changed. And that made the Xarn nervous. On the Union, homeworld leaders watched the events unfold in shock. They saw Earth take hit after hit and say nothing. They saw humans act as if war was a story, not a truth. They asked each other, "What are they planning? Why are they smiling?" And no one had an answer. The Xarn continued their strike, now reaching the edge of Earth's atmosphere, ready to send troops, ready to land and conquer, ready to take the ground and raise their flags. Then the sky spoke. Not with words, not with sound, but with action. From the dark side of the Earth, a beam of pure white light rose. It cut through clouds. It touched one of the Xarn ships, and in 1 second that ship was no more, not broken, not burning, just gone like a candle in the wind. The Xarn stopped. They froze. They searched. They screamed. What was that? What happened? Who did it? But Earth did not reply. Another light, another ship vanished, another scream, another silence. The humans were not silent because of fear, they were silent because they were hunters, and the hunt had just begun. The High General clenched his fist. Find them now, find the source now, but it was too late. The shadows had moved. The trap had closed. And long before the stars fell quiet, long before the peace began, long before Earth joined the Union, there was a time of fire and shadow, a time when humans stood alone and faced a universe that did not know them. The Xarn remember little of that time. They chose not to listen. They chose not to see. They only saw the soft humans of today, the quiet ones, the peaceful ones, who never raised a voice, never lifted a blade, who built gardens where others built walls. But there were still those who remembered. Deep in the vaults beneath the Arctic ice, old records were kept, not in digital files, not in the cloud, but in hard black steel, locked away in rooms with no names, sealed by codes known only to the oldest of Earth's protectors. Inside these rooms were words and warnings, memories written by hands that had seen the stars bleed and the planets burn, reports from the first days when Earth reached beyond its moon and met life that smiled with teeth. One file was marked with a single phrase in red ink: "Do not open unless peace ends." And now it was open. In a room with cold air and silent lights, an old man stood with his hand on the file. His face was lined, his eyes dim but steady. He had waited many years for this moment. Behind him, younger officers watched, unsure of what came next, unsure if the old stories were true. He opened the file and began to read. The words inside were simple. They told of a battle long buried, a warning sent to the Xarn 500 years ago during the first meeting between human explorers and the crystal-skinned giants. The Xarn had arrived in peace, or so they claimed, but their ships carried hidden weapons. Their smiles were thin, their deals twisted and sharp. When the first human ship refused to kneel, the Xarn destroyed it without warning. 300 lives lost in one flash of light. Earth did not respond with words, they responded with something else. In secret, the humans launched a small weapon, not large, not fast, just smart. It slipped past the Xarn defenses and attached itself to their flagship. And then it waited. When the Xarn tried to leave, the weapon sang a code into their engines, and the engines turned on themselves. The ship vanished in light, and the other Xarn ships fled without a second shot. After that, Earth sent a message to the Xarn, a message simple and short: "We are not what we seem. Do not test us again." That message was buried by the Union, buried by politics, buried by time. The peace was young, and no one wanted old blood to stain the new sky. But the humans never forgot. They built and learned and watched. They smiled. They helped. They played the role of the quiet friend. But behind the mask, the mind worked. The hand built the eye, never looked away. Now the Xarn had returned, and they had forgotten the warning. The man closed the file and looked at the officers around him. "Activate protocol, Leviathan," he said in a calm voice. They hesitated for only a breath, then moved. Across the Earth, in silent rooms, in deep bunkers, in orbiting stations, covered by space dust, old systems woke up, old machines stretched their limbs, old eyes opened their eyes and remembered who they were. Protocol Leviathan was not a weapon, it was a mind, it was a plan, it was a story written across 1,000 years, a path that led from silence to storm. It was the story of what happens when you mistake patience for weakness, when you forget what lies beneath the calm sea. Ships with no name began to rise from oceans, from mountains, from beneath city streets. They were not large, but they were sharp. They were not many, but they were enough. Each one carried code written by hands long gone, commands written by people who had seen the first wars and knew that peace would never last forever. The Xarn did not see these ships. They were busy searching the clouds above. They were busy firing at ghosts. They were busy listening for answers that would never come. In the darkness of space, one of their ships began to fail. The lights dimmed, the engines slowed, the walls began to breathe like something alive. "Sir, we have a breach," the officer said, "but nothing is on the sensors." Then the ship cracked, not in two, not in fire, but inward, as if the metal had forgotten how to be solid. They screamed, but Earth did not speak. In another sector, a Xarn cruiser found its own weapons turning backward, locking on friendly ships before going silent forever. Inside those ships were human whispers, code flowing like wind, touching every system, every wire, every switch. On Earth, the people still lived their lives, still walked their dogs, still played their songs. But in the shadows behind the screens, inside the data, they were everywhere. The High General watched as more of his fleet began to slow down, flicker, shut down one by one, as if touched by a hand too fast to see. He shouted, "Find their source, burn the surface, leave nothing standing." But even as he spoke, his own ship began to drift, its engines humming a strange tune, its walls shaking like laughter. Back in the command center on Earth, the old man smiled and said, "They do not understand. They thought we were asleep, but we were dreaming, and dreams are where monsters grow." The Union watched in silence, their leaders unsure, their people confused. They had always seen humans as allies, but now they saw something else, something older, something deeper, something that did not fear war. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy saw Earth, not as a friend, not as a helper, but as a force. The warning had been given long ago, and now it was being repeated, not in words, but in silence and fire. The stars above Earth no longer blinked. They watched without light, without sound, without movement, as the Xarn fleet sat still and waiting, broken pieces, floating in black space, like shattered pride drifting in a sea of silence. The humans had still not spoken, no threats, no demands, no final warnings. Just silence, just watching, just waiting. Inside the Xarn flagship, the High General stood with clenched fists, his crew around him, trembling, screens, flickering voices, lost in static. Something had gone wrong, but no one knew how. No one knew when. No one could explain. "Sir, we are being watched," said one of the bridge officers. "But we cannot see them, we cannot feel them, we cannot touch them." "Watched by who?" the general growled, his voice sharp with fear. "By ghosts." "No, sir, by humans," the officer said. "By shadows made by men." The general turned to the stars and stared at Earth, still shining, still calm, still smiling. He shouted at the planet, "Show yourselves, cowards, fight us if you dare." But Earth did not reply. In the shadows behind the moon, human ships hovered unseen, their bodies made of black matter, their engines soundless, their weapons hidden within quiet hulls, shaped like broken blades. They did not shine. They did not blink. They did not announce their presence. They simply waited. Inside those ships, human pilots sat in cold silence, hands on controls, minds linked to machine, no heartbeat above a whisper, no movement beyond what was needed. They had trained for this their whole lives, not for defense, not for peace, but for the moment when peace would end and the hunt would begin. Back on Earth, the people kept moving. They bought food. They walked their pets. They watched the skies with calm faces. They had grown up hearing stories of the old world, of the wars that shaped the Earth, of the pain their ancestors endured to give them this peace. Now they were ready to protect it. In underground bunkers, children were gathered, not in fear, but in care. Teachers explained that the stars were restless, that the world above was being tested, and that Earth was answering without shouting, without chaos, without fire. "We are not afraid," one teacher said to her class. "We are just getting started." The human command center was deep beneath the ocean, built into a trench so dark and deep even the sun could not find it here. Officers worked in quiet rooms filled with glowing maps, blinking lines, and silent numbers, tracking every breath. The Xarn fleet took every move, every drift, every moment of hesitation. "They're scared," one commander said. "They thought we were prey. Now they smell something different." "Not prey," another officer replied. "Not anymore. Now they smell hunters." The order had not yet been given. Earth was still waiting. The old general stood alone in a chamber filled with names carved into steel walls, names of soldiers, long gone, names of people who dreamed of peace and planned for war. He ran his hand over the cold metal and whispered, "Soon." Back in orbit, Xarn ships began to move, not forward, not in attack, but in confusion. Some tried to pull away, engines humming off to navigation, failing, as if the stars themselves refused to guide them. Others began scanning empty space, desperate to find the enemy they could not see, aiming weapons at shadows that vanished the moment they turned. One ship fired at a piece of debris, only to watch it split into 100 small drones, each one carrying a mirror, each one bouncing light, each one feeding false images into Xarn sensors. "They're playing with us," a Xarn captain said. "They're already inside our systems." Then the lights went out. Not across one ship, not across one fleet, but across dozen screens. Died engines, stalled air grew thin, voices cut off in mid-word. The Xarn shouted, "Reset everything, scan everything, block the signals, find the virus." But there was no virus, only a mind watching, only a presence waiting. And still Earth remained quiet. In the Union Council chambers, leaders argued. Some begged Earth to stop others, asked for answers. Many simply watched with wide eyes and tight throats as the humans said nothing, did nothing, but still controlled everything. How did they do this? Asked one ambassador. How did we never see? Because we never looked, replied another. We saw what they wanted us to see. In a hidden lab on Mars, an AI spoke to its creator. It said, the Xarn fear the wrong thing. They fear weapons. But our weapons are not made of steel. They are made of time, made of patience, made of silence. The creator nodded and said, the hunt has not begun. We are still waiting for the signal. That signal came in the form of laughter. On every Xarn ship, speakers cracked and hissed, and from within came a sound that did not belong to machines. It was low and steady and human. It was laughter, cold, calm, and clean. It played once, then stopped. Nothing else followed. The Xarn stared at their screens. No new message, no command, no voice, just that laugh echoing through metal halls like a ghost with a smile. They are mocking us, the High General screamed. They dare laugh at us. One of his officers whispered, maybe they know something we do not. Back on Earth, the old general opened a small black box. Inside was a simple switch, no lights, no wires, no noise. He placed his hand on the switch and waited. Not yet, he said. They are not afraid enough. The human ships began to shift, moving slowly, forming lines like wolves closing a circle around wounded prey. No signals, no noise, just movement, perfect and patient. The stars above blinked again, as if they too were waiting. The Xarn did not see the shape forming around them. They were blind to the dance happening just beyond their reach, a silent cage made of black steel and human resolve. Still Earth waited. Still the humans smiled. Still the hunt had not yet begun. But the galaxy could feel it. A storm was coming, and it was wearing a human face. The silence between stars grew heavy like a breath, held too long like a storm waiting. Just beyond the hills, the Xarn fleet floated, broken and confused. Their lights dimmed, their systems weak, their pride cracked. The laughter still echoed inside their ships, not loud, not mocking, just calm and steady like the sound of someone who already knew how the story would end. The High General of the Xarn stood on his bridge, hands gripping the railing, his voice low and sharp. Find them, find the humans. Bring me something I can strike, something I can see, something I can kill. But nothing came. Sensors still failed. Scanners showed only shadows, maps twisted as if space itself refused to obey. There will drones sent to scout returned blind or never returned at all. We are being hunted, one officer said, his voice trembling. We are not fighting, we are being studied like animals in a glass cage. No, the general snapped, we are warriors, we are conquerors. They are farmers, they are weak, they only survive because we allowed it. The officer said nothing, only looked at the screens, filled with empty space and cold numbers. Then something changed. A ripple moved through space like a breath, like a whisper, and with it came movement. Black ships appeared, not all at once, not loud, not fast, just there, like they had always been there, like they were waiting behind the curtain of the void. They did not glow, they did not hum, they did not scream their presence into the stars. They just watched. Each one shaped like a blade, like a broken piece of night, with no reflection, no signature, no identity, only purpose. The Xarn saw them, now hundreds, maybe more, too many to count, too silent to trace. The general gave the order, fire. Weapons turned, beams charged, energy surged across the fleet, and the stars lit up with rage. But nothing happened. The black ships moved, not quickly, not clumsily, just enough to be somewhere else, just enough to stay untouchable. And then the Xarn weapons died. Across the fleet, guns shut down, targeting vanished, ammo feeds froze, engines stuttered, and shields fell silent. One by one the ships began to drift, no control, no power, no fight. The black ships moved closer. On Earth, command centers watched without cheering, without speaking, only observing, like a teacher watching a test unfold. This is Phase 2, said a young officer, her fingers tapping a silent code. This is where they begin to understand. In the skies above Earth, more black ships rose from oceans and deserts and deep forests, machines long hidden, long forgotten by all, but a few now moving with perfect purpose. They were not just ships, they were extensions of a plan written before the peace ever began, designs passed down through generations of minds who never trusted silence, who knew that peace was a season, not a state. These machines were faster, stronger, smarter than anything the galaxy had seen, and they did not look like war, they looked like precision, they looked like control, they looked like inevitability. The Union Council watched in silence. Leaders across the stars, now unsure, now afraid. The humans they once ignored now moved with a strength they could not match, could not measure, could not stop. Why did they never show this? Asked one ambassador. Why did they hide this power? Because, said another, because they never forgot what we chose to forget. Inside the Xarn fleet, panic. Gruesome ships tried to run, turning toward deep space, their engines burning wild. But the black ships were already there, waiting, not blocking, not attacking, just watching. The fleeing ships stopped, engines cut by invisible code, doors locked by whispers, and the system lights turned to red, then to black. One ship broadcast a message to Earth, asking for terms, for reason, for mercy. No answer came. Inside one of the black ships, a human pilot watched the Xarn message play. Her eyes calm, her voice low, as she said, "They are not ready to hear the truth, not yet." She sent no reply, only data to the next ship, and moved forward. The black ships began to surround the Xarn fleet in perfect circles. No weapons raised, no threats made, just motion, like hunters closing in, with no need for teeth. Inside the Xarn flagship, the general paced, his rage, now fear, his commands, now questions. What do they want? What are they doing? Why will they not fight? Because, said a voice behind him, because they already won. The general turned and saw nothing, no figure, no face, only the echo of the voice in the air. In another part of the ship, screens lit up, showing Earth, not burning, not shaking, just shining, calm and blue and whole. One image showed a garden where children played under trees, while far above them fleets fought, and fell, and vanished. How can they smile? One Xarn asked. How can they laugh when war touches their sky? Because, said another, because they are not fighting for victory, they are fighting for memory. In the deepest vault beneath Earth, the old general stood with his hand on a final switch, not red, not large, just metal, and cold and old. Behind him were soldiers who had never seen combat, who had only trained in silent rooms, who had read stories written by ghosts, who had believed they would never be needed. Now they stood ready. He turned to them and said, "We do not fight with hate. We do not fight for power. We fight because they made us remember, and now we make them remember." Across the human ships, new systems came online, weapons that did not fire bullets or beams, but light and thought and silence. They began to move again, this time toward the heart of the Xarn fleet, not fast, not slow, just sure. Inside every Xarn ship, voices rose, orders screamed, doors sealed, as humans took over one system at a time, not with force, but with design. One Xarn technician wept as his console showed human code, flowing like water across his screens, like veins of thought, like living machines. "They built this long ago," he whispered, "and waited for us to forget." Another ship spun out of control, not from attack, but from loss of meaning, its crew paralyzed by what they could not stop. Still the black ships moved closer. Not one touched a Xarn vessel, not one opened fire, not one raised a shield. They simply circled and watched and waited. Back on Earth, a child looked to the sky and asked, "Will we be safe?" Her mother nodded yes, because we remember who we are. The sky above Earth was now filled with light, not from fire, not from destruction, but from ships that no longer needed to hide. The truth was clear. Earth had not built weapons to win a war. They had built tools to end one before it ever began. Now the Xarn knew. But it was too late. The humans had not just survived. They had evolved. The Xarn were not used to losing. They had crushed empires. They had burned moons. They had made giants kneel with fire and fear. But now they drifted in silence, their ships useless, their systems blind, their pride broken. The black ships of Earth moved with perfect calm, each motion slow and exact, no fear, no rage, only purpose. The humans did not speak. They did not celebrate. They did not threaten. They simply acted. One by one, the Xarn ships stopped moving, not from damage, not from attack, but from something deeper, something colder. They were being unraveled piece by piece from the inside. Control rooms froze, screens filled with human code, lights dimmed as if the air itself had turned against them. Nothing responded, nothing obeyed, and the crews inside began to feel it, the weight of helplessness. In the flagship of the Xarn, the High General stood alone, his officers silent around him, no words, left no hope, left just the sound of systems failing, and the image of Earth calm and untouched, still shining in the distance. "How did this happen?" he whispered. "How did we lose before the first real shot?" But there was no one to answer. Across the stars, the Galactic Union watched and waited. Their screens showed the end of a fleet, the fall of a race, that once claimed to be the strongest many leaders, sat in silence, some in shame, some in awe, some in fear. The humans had done what no one believed possible. They had ended a war without making it look like one. They had defended without attacking. They had destroyed without fire. In the Black Command ship orbiting Earth, the human captain watched the data scroll down a screen showing the positions of every Xarn ship, every movement, every breath, and she said softly, "Phase 3 is complete. Begin final step." A message was sent not across radio, not through sound, but through a coded stream of data, sent directly into the Xarn systems. It had only 3 words: "Stand down now." In the Xarn fleet, those words appeared on every screen, every wall, every handheld device. The letters burned in red, simple and final, and no one could stop them from appearing. One Xarn commander tried to delete the message, but his system locked him out. Another tried to send a reply, but the console laughed, a low human sound that echoed through the ship like a cold wind. "They control us," he said. "They control everything." And still the black ships waited. Then something new happened. The human ships moved again, not toward the fleet, but past it, beyond it, into deep space. They did not fire. They did not chase. They simply left, leaving the Xarn to float in silence and shame. Earth had made its point. Back on the planet, the people watched as the skies cleared, the stars returned to their places, the fear faded, and life began again. The children played, the workers smiled, the world breathed once more. In the secret rooms under oceans and mountains, the soldiers stood down, the machines slept, the switches turned off, and the lights dimmed like the end of a long night. The old general removed his gloves, placed them on a shelf, and looked to his team. "You did well," he said. "Now we return to peace. But we do not forget." Across the Union, messages poured in, some of thanks, some of fear, some of apology. Earth responded to none. Instead, they sent only one message to all, a simple statement: "We defended ourselves, nothing more." But the Union knew it was more. It was a warning wrapped in silence, a lesson written without blood, a reminder that Earth was not weak. Earth was not slow. Earth was not what they thought. In a council chamber far from Earth, one leader asked the room, "What do we do now?" Another replied, "We learn, we listen, we remember." Back in the ruins of the Xarn fleet, the High General finally fell to his knees, his hands open, his eyes wide. He looked at the last image on his screen, the face of a human pilot, calm and quiet, her eyes steady, her mouth still. Then the screen went black. That was the end of the Xarn war. No battles, no cities burned, no heroes fallen, just silence and a memory that would never fade. Earth did not ask for land, did not demand payment, did not punish the survivors. They sent aid to those left behind. They repaired what could be repaired. They said nothing about power, nothing about victory. But every star, every leader, every soldier knew the galaxy had changed. In a quiet classroom, a teacher showed her students a picture of Earth seen from space and said, "This is our home. We do not run. We do not shout. We remember, we prepare." One student raised a hand and asked, "Why did we not fight with fire?" The teacher smiled and said, "Because fire ends, but memory does not, and the stars will remember this day." In a distant colony, a Xarn child looked up at the night sky and asked, "What happened to our ships?" The elder beside him closed his eyes and whispered, "We met the humans, and we did not listen when they warned us. And now we listen." In the deepest halls of Earth, a final report was written, placed in a vault next to the others. The title simple: The Fall of the Xarn. No stories of glory, no tales of blood, only facts, only dates, only truths. The vault closed, and the world above moved on. But far in space, something stirred, not war, not fear, just questions. Who are the humans really? What else have they hidden? What else do they remember? The answer lay not in weapons, not in ships, but in silence, in planning, in patience. The humans had shown what power truly looked like, and it did not scream. It whispered. The stars no longer feared the silence. They had learned to listen to it, to feel it, to understand that silence is not always peace, and noise is not always war. The galaxy had watched Earth and seen something it had never seen before, something quiet, something strong, something unforgettable. The Xarn no longer ruled. Their name no longer brought fear. Their empire had fallen, without fire, without invasion, without a single planet taken by force, and yet nothing remained of their pride. Their ships still floated dead in space, cold and lifeless. Their systems locked, their weapons useless. Their fleets, a memory of arrogance, now turned to dust. The humans did not gloat. They did not laugh in public, they did not march through cities or raise flags above ruins. They simply returned to Earth and closed the doors behind them. But the galaxy still heard the laughter. It was not cruel, it was not loud, it was not sharp, it was soft, steady, clean, like a single note, played by someone who knew the tune before it began, like a reminder, like a signal. In the Union Council chambers, the leaders met again, their voices low, their eyes heavy. Some spoke of new laws, some spoke of new fears, but all spoke with respect when they said the word Earth. The ambassador from Earth stood only once. She said, "We warned them long ago. We did not want war. We only wanted to be left in peace. We were not silent, because we were afraid. We were silent, because we were ready." Then she sat and said nothing more. Across the stars, stories spread, not from news, not from officials, but from voices, whispers, messages passed between pilots and traders, between captains and soldiers. They say the humans built weapons inside their cities. One voice said they say their ships are alive and waiting. Another said they say the Xarn begged at the end, but no one listened. Each story different, each story true and not true, each one adding to the mystery that now wrapped Earth like a cloak. In a quiet home near the mountains, an old man sat on a wooden bench, watching the clouds drift above. He had once been a soldier, then a teacher, then just a man, but now people called him something else. They called him a witness. A child sat beside him, eyes wide, full of questions. "Is it true?" she asked. "Did we really stop the Xarn without shooting them?" The man smiled and nodded. "We stopped them without needing to shout, because sometimes a whisper is louder than a scream." The child asked, "Were you scared?" "Yes," he said, "but we did not let fear lead us. We let memory guide us." High above them, a black ship still floated above the clouds, invisible to all but those who knew it was there. It had not moved since the day of the stand down. It had no crew, no lights, no sound, but it waited, just in case. On the far edge of the galaxy, a small research station received an old signal buried in static beneath layers of dust, and noise it carried, laughter, human laughter, clear and calm, followed by a simple sentence: "You should have listened." The scientists played the message over and over, trying to understand if it was real, if it was a warning, if it was a joke. None could agree, but none could forget it. In a hidden bunker on a forgotten moon, the last Xarn general sat alone. No throne, no army, no command, just a single image on a cracked screen, the face of Earth, turning slowly beneath its sun, perfect blue and green and gold, untouched. He had no words left, only memories of what had been, what could have been, what never should have been. He whispered to the dark, "We thought they were soft, but they were only patient. We thought they had forgotten, but they remembered everything." And now so would he. On Earth, the people lived their lives as before, walking roads, planting food, laughing with friends, loving with family, their skies clear, their hearts strong, their dreams unbroken. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human, not just to survive, but to prepare, to wait, to rise when needed and disappear when not. In space, new races rose, new voices joined the Union, and when they asked about Earth, the others said only this: "Do not mistake kindness for weakness. Do not mistake silence for surrender. Do not mistake humans for anything less than what they are." Some visited Earth hoping to understand, hoping to learn, but the humans shared little. They spoke in smiles and gave simple answers. They opened books and told stories, but they kept their secrets close, because they knew peace was only a moment, and moments pass. Still the galaxy listened, and still the laughter echoed, not in cruelty, not in triumph, but in memory. It became part of the stars. In the schools of distant worlds, students learned history lessons about the Great Betrayal and the Silent War, and the day the humans reminded everyone who they were. They read about the Xarn rise and fall, and the 1,000 years of peace, and the 7 days that changed everything. In one classroom, a teacher asked, "What did we learn from the humans?" A student answered, "We learned that peace is not given, it is guarded." Another said, "We learned that sometimes the smallest voice holds the greatest power." And one more said, "We learned to listen before it is too late." In a command center deep under Earth, a light blinked, once then stopped. It was not a warning, not a signal, not a call, just a reminder that someone somewhere might forget again. And Earth would be ready. The old general sat in a garden near a stream, birds flying, trees swaying, the world at peace. He looked to the sky and smiled, not because he enjoyed the quiet, but because he knew it would not last forever. And that was fine. Because humans remember. Because humans prepare. Because humans laugh, not because they are not afraid, but because they have already seen the end and chosen to stand anyway. The stars turned slowly above, and the planets spun, and the people dreamed. And far away, in a cold, forgotten system, a small drone activated its sensors and played a single sound through the darkness. A soft human laugh. Then silence again. And the galaxy listened.